The bells at Harbor Heights were still ringing when my phone lit up with a text that split my life in two. I was in my grandmother's lace dress veil, just right, 200 people holding their breath. And he wrote, "Can't do this. Taking the trip with Lena instead. You deserve better." Before the whispers turned into a storm, a man in a navy suit stepped out of the last pew and said, quiet as a promise, "If you want to leave with your head high, I've got a car outside." I didn't know him, didn't know his story, didn't even know his last name, but I knew this. Staying meant becoming a spectacle, leaving meant choosing myself, so I gathered the dress, tucked my chin, and followed him out through a forest of phones. The Jeep he drove wasn't pretty. It rumbled like a loyal dog, and somehow the sound settled my nerves more than any hymn. He kept his eyes on the road, and his voice low offered to take me anywhere but home, because home meant my mom's brave face folding in on itself, and I wasn't ready for that, not yet. He brought me to Bluefinch Cafe, a tiny place painted sunrise yellow, where the chalkboard says, "Warm scones, no judgments." The owner took one look at me and led us to the back booth like she'd been saving it for emergencies. Chamomile showed up without a question. Kindness arrived like an oxygen mask. And for the first time that day, I could breathe without tasting salt. The man's name was Miles. Just Miles for now, and he had the kind of calm that doesn't demand attention. "It makes space," he said. He'd seen a lot of noise in his own life, and sometimes a stranger is the only person who can cut through it. You know what I mean? And when I told him my mother had saved for 2 years to help pay for the reception, and the flowers, and the food that would now sit and wither under fluorescent lights. He didn't pity me, he thought. Then he said, "What if it doesn't go to waste?" His idea was simple and wild at once. Flip the whole thing into a community dinner invite, my students' families, the shelter up on Kingfisher, the neighbors who show up without being asked. Make the day about gratitude instead of humiliation. Feed people, don't feed gossip. And I don't know, maybe I wanted a win so badly I could taste it, but the picture he painted felt like a lifeline. So I called my mom, braced for tears, got pure steel instead. "We'll plate it ourselves," she said. And 2 hours later, the DJ had swapped crooners for Motown. The florist had tucked roses into mason jars, like they always belonged there. The caterer was boxing up excess for the night shift at the clinic, and the room buzzed with a better kind of story. Miles kept slipping where the pressure lived, arranging a ride for an elder who couldn't do the stairs, making sure a kid with allergies had a safe plate without a neon sign over it, asking me if I needed water or space or just the reminder that I wasn't alone, all those small mercies that stitch dignity back together when it's been torn. By night's end, I could stand upright again, which felt like a miracle. And when he said he knew of an education outreach program that might want a person like me, a first-grade teacher, who believed books should travel like ice cream trucks. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. 3 weeks later, I walked into North Star Initiative in my best Navy dress, the one that makes me feel like I could testify under oath and keep my voice from shaking. The interview wasn't really an interview. Dr. Priya just wanted to hear what I'd build if someone handed me a key, so I told her. Solar book carts, rolling into neighborhoods, reading corners in laundromats, museum nights for kids who think museums aren't for them. And she smiled like a person who has a hammer and a free Saturday. "Let's do it," she said, and that's how I learned what it feels like when a door that's always been locked just opens. Work took off fast in the best way. Our harbor carts parked near soccer fields, and Bodega's kids curled into beanbags with comics and biographies side by side. Nobody apologized for their taste. Then came field trips funded by a benefactor who wanted to stay anonymous. Ocean Institute. In the morning, planetarium. At night, hands on glass, eyes on stars, one kid whispered. Miss Morales, I didn't know the ceiling could do that, and I had to turn away so I wouldn't cry in front of everybody. Meanwhile, Miles was there, but not hovering. The back row at presentations, the thumbs up across a hallway, the kind of encouragement that doesn't push it. Invites when my rent doubled and my commute tripled. He somehow knew a landlord who cared more about community than profit. A 2-bedroom with creaky floors and a sunroom where lesson plans could sprawl across the light. "What's the catch?" I asked, and he said, "A good man with a soft spot for teachers," and yeah, I took it, because sometimes the world doesn't throw you a bone, sometimes it passes the basket. Then the past tried to claw back. Derek showed up first at my mom's, then at my workplace, red-faced and urgent, saying he'd made a mistake, saying we owed it to our history. I was embarrassed, then angry, then tired, and when I told Miles he didn't go macho, he went legal. "Would you like me to handle this within the law?" he asked. And a day later, a letter spelled out boundaries so clearly even a stubborn man could read them. Yeah, that happened, and I slept for the first time in weeks. That might have been the end of the hard, but life likes a twist right in the middle. When you think your footing is sure, there it is. A knock on my door at dusk, a woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen every kind of human. She introduced herself as June Miles's grandmother and asked for 5 minutes lemon bars in hand, like a peace treaty. 5 minutes turned into the truth. She told me Miles wasn't just Miles. He was Miles Hart, CEO of the Hartwell Group, founder of North Star, the very benefactor who kept writing checks to the dreams I carried in a tote bag. The kind of reveal that makes the floor tilt, the Jeep, the key card, the way rooms seemed to part for him like water. All of it clicked and rang wrong at the same time. I said the word lie. June said the word lonely. I said power. She said fear. And in that gentle back and forth, she handed me the only thing worth anything, a clear choice. I texted him the next morning, "Come over, we need to talk." He walked in, saw my face, and said, "June told you." Then he sat like a kid outside the principal's office and said he was sorry. Said he should have told me sooner. Said he kept putting it off because he liked how I looked at him when he was just a person, not a headline or a bank account. I told him what hurt, that every favor was suddenly double-edged, that I didn't know if I'd said yes to a friend or to a boss, that power sits in the air, whether you mention it or not. And to his credit, he didn't argue. He promised a firewall, legal and real, between his position and my path. He promised North Star decisions about my work would flow through a board that could overrule him. He promised to stand in the light and stay there. Then he took a breath and said what he should have said weeks earlier. "I love you," and I heard myself say it back before my brain could throw caution signs, because it was true, because the kindness on the worst day of my life had grown into a steady place to stand. We built guardrails, not fairy dust. Formal recusal from my evaluations and grants third-party oversight on the programs I led. Invitations for partners who didn't care about our story so much as results. And the results came rooftop greenhouses on schools that had never had a patch of dirt. Maker clubs with thrifted laptops and 3D printers that needed coaxing. Saturday reading parties where parents and kids swapped books like recipes. The ceiling kept doing new things. A year after the non-wedding, we stood on the bluff at Golden Point with wildflowers from our yard and said vows that made room for human error. Tell the truth. Even when it's messy, use what we have to open doors for kids. Be each other's home when the internet decides to be cruel. We danced under string lights. We sent guests home with tiny potted herbs for their windowsills. We laughed when my student gave the toast he'd practiced for a week. Miss Ava is brave and Mr. Miles is nice, and together they are super. And that was that. If you want the peace that still divides our dinner table. 2 months later, I found a background report on me from way back at the start. Not scandalous, just thorough in a way that pricks pride. I set it on the counter and said, "We promised no secrets." He admitted it fast. Said his world trains him to be suspicious. Said he was trying to lead with trust now, and pay the price if he's wrong, not a private investigator. And I believed him, not because he's perfect, but because he didn't defend the worst habit he had. So here's where I land. People hide for reasons that are painfully human: fear and loneliness, and the ache to be seen clean, and then they either learn or they don't. They either build boundaries and honor them, or they don't. And if they do, maybe the story can keep growing. Maybe love doesn't fix power, but it can keep it honest. Tell me where the line lives for you. If someone hides a piece of themselves because they think the truth will warp how you see them, is that understandable or unforgivable? If they come clean, lock in boundaries and prove it. Over time, does the balance reset? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me what you've seen, where you live, what felt fair, what felt foul, and what second chance you'd give if the person standing in your doorway owned the whole truth and asked to try again.